Hello, Bookworms of Concord. I got another book review for you. I finished the story of Kullervo by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, this is a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be when I first shared this on one of my mini book haul videos. The actual story by Tolkien is really just this long. It's 35 pages of reading. The introduction is very helpful, so if you pick this up, I definitely recommend you read the intro, so you know certain things like, so basically what they did was they took this work by Tolkien, which is his earliest fiction he's written, and is essentially just like his handwritten story of his version of Kullervo, and I'll talk about who that is in a minute, and in some of his notes as well. So because of that, there's a lot of errors, and there's things like he purposefully changes some of the names for what he wants to do with the mythology, and at times he forgets to leave that what he changed that name as. For example, at one point he changes Kullervo to Sari, and he goes back to Kullervo for some reason, but only because, again, these are handwritten. This is what he wrote by hand, and they're mainly just his notes of the story of Kullervo. And so Kullervo is a character from Kalevala. It's the Finnish epic poem that is extremely important to the Finnish and Karelian people. And just to repeat from my video on the mini book haul, one of them is that during the Swedish rule of Finland from, I believe, is the mid 13th century up until 1721, it was not impossible. It was illegal for Finnish people to speak their own language and to give their children Finnish names. So by the time they gained their independence from Sweden, they had almost lost their entire culture, including their language. And not just their language, but also their mythology, which has to do with their culture, of course. Not that anybody believes in mythology, it just has significant cultural implications. And so the Kalevala was written, I forget who the author is, but he wrote the Kalevala to, I guess, revitalize the Finnish culture, and it's extremely important to the Finnish people. And so Kullervo is one of the people in that Finnish epic, and he's Elias Lönnrot. Elias Lönnrot is the guy who wrote the Kalevala. Kullervo is one of the characters in the Finnish epic Kalevala, and he is basically just the quintessential tragic hero. It's just a great tragic hero story. I won't tell you exactly what happens, but it's a great story. It's incredibly sad. It's like, if you've read Of Mice and Men, that's a sad story, not a tragic hero, but I don't know, the sadness just kind of reminded me of that, but it's much sadder. So if you want to pick this up, I recommend you probably search online somewhere Kullervo from Kalevala and read that story. Find the English translation. Read that first, and then read what Tolkien writes in here, because it'll make it much easier to understand. And the other thing I would recommend too is familiarize yourself with how to pronounce Finnish words and names. Otherwise, you'll have no idea how to pronounce a lot of these names and places. But all you should know for now is you pronounce every single letter. Even if Finnish has a habit of like sandwiching a bunch of vowels together. at least in English, we kind of connect them. Finnish doesn't do that. So you'd even pronounce all those vowels together. Talking about rating, it's hard. You have to rate this differently because this isn't a finished work. Finished. Pun intended. This isn't a finished work. It's, again, it's the earliest fictional or mythological story Tolkien has written, which heavily influenced him, not just for the Lord of the Rings, but also the Children of Húrin, I believe it's called. And so it's an unfinished work, so you can't really rate it or judge it as a finished work. Rather, that means we should rate it as what it's intended to be. And you can see where Tolkien was trying to go with this story as you're reading it. So because of that, with that in mind, and with the knowledge I already had of Kullervo's story from reading the Kalevala before, I would honestly give it 5 stars. Even though there are a lot of errors, like there's a lot of run-on sentences, and a little hard to follow because again of those simple mistakes he makes. But you can't really knock points off of that because it's literally a rough draft, right? So that's why I was saying you got to rate it as where the story was intended to head. So that's why I give it 5 stars. He was doing a phenomenal job of taking that mythology of the Kalevala and kind of filling in the blanks, so to speak, giving more detail to the epic poem, and just doing his own thing with it. It's wonderful. And I wish he would have finished it, because if he finished it, it would have just been an even much more beautiful and tragic story than already is. And by the way, the cover is Tolkien's own watercolor work that he painted. And it shows it inside as well. So J.R.R. Tolkien actually painted that. It's really, I can't recommend this to everyone just because, again, it's an unfinished work. So really it's for Tolkien nerds. If you really want to understand, especially how the Finnish mythology heavily influenced the corpus of Tolkien. I didn't read the essays that are after this. The other thing I forgot to mention, the majority of the book are essays notes and commentaries and essays by Tolkien, and I think maybe some other people, but mostly Tolkien himself. I didn't read those. I just wanted to read the story he was writing. I might go back to it later, but by all means, read it yourself.
Is it a must-read for Tolkien fans?
My wife just asked if it's a must-read for Tolkien fans. I don't know. Like I said, if you are an absolute nerd and want to know everything you want to know about Tolkien, and for lack of a better term, be autistic about it, by all means, pick it up. So, I would recommend it for those nerds. Okay, bye.